Hello, everyone, and welcome to this evening's training sessions for school council chairs and members. Thank you very much for joining me. I see many of you are back after Monday night, above and beyond. Thank you very much for coming here and for spending an hour and a half with me this evening. It's not a very nice night, so I hope you had some dinner or at least got the kids fed in front of the television. Just to let you know, there is live transcription available if you need it. You just click on the button at the bottom of the screen. As well, this session is being recorded and will be available on the TDSB PCEO YouTube channel. I'm not sure. I don't think there's anything else I need to tell you. I've told you about the transcription and the recording. And so let's get started. Monday night, we were able to finish up early. I'm going to try my best to get you out of here early tonight, but we have a lot more information to cover. And sometimes I do go on a bit. So I will try to keep in mind time and that you have a lot of other things to do in your life. So let's get started. So as you can see, tonight is about school council operations. We're going to look at your mandate as a school council, the importance of relationships and communication, some hints about meetings, look a bit at committees and finances and volunteers. And throughout it all, I'll be giving you links to tools that are available for you. I'm hoping to give you the links in the chat at the end of the presentation, but otherwise you could just screenshot those parts of the presentation that are important to you. I should introduce myself. I'm Nancy Angevine Sands. I'm a consultant in family engagement with my company With Equal Step. And this year I am contracted with the Parent and Community Engagement Office to support school councils, especially around the writing of their bylaws and in presentation of a series of training workshops, and also just to help school councils in any issues that come up. So any questions that you have coming up from tonight or any of the other training sessions that you might take part in, you can address them to me. My email is at the bottom. It's withequalstep@gmail.com. So let's get started. We'll begin with an acknowledgement of traditional lands. We acknowledge that we are hosted on the lands of the Mississaugas of the Anishinaabe and the Haudenosaunee Confederacy and the Wendat. We also recognize the enduring presence of all First Nations, Métis, and Inuit peoples. So throughout this presentation, you'll see the little guy at the bottom pop up, and he's to remind us that we have to keep our eye on the ball. And the ball I want you to keep your eye on throughout everything you do in your work with school councils is the mandate or the purpose of school councils as laid out in the legislation, Regulation 612. The purpose of school councils is through the active participation of parents to improve pupil achievement and to enhance the accountability of the education system to parents. Those two things, pupil achievement and enhancing the accountability of the system to parents, is your job. Your primary means of achieving this purpose is by making recommendations to the principal of the school and to the board that established the council. And it's not there to make recommendations to the ministry if and when your council deems that necessary. It is required of the principal and the board to reply back to any recommendations you make. And that means that if let's take it at the simple level, at the school level. If you are making a recommendation to your principal must respond back, not necessarily immediately. They may take the recommendation under consideration and tell you, yes, we are going to take that recommendation and move forward, and here's how we're going to do it. Or two, we like the recommendation, but we have to massage it a little bit. And here is what we're thinking, and we're suggesting that maybe the best way to do it would be. What's your input on that? Or three, we cannot move forward with this recommendation, and here is why we cannot move forward with the recommendation. Perhaps it's opposing TDSB policies or procedures. Perhaps it just doesn't work at this moment in time in your school, but they must respond to any recommendations you make. So we're going to see my little guy pop up every so often throughout this presentation. Parent and caregiver engagement begins and ends with relationships. If you do not have relationships with the parents and caregivers in your community, if you do not have relationships with the staff, the teachers, the principal, the caretaking staff, your EAs, your CYWs, you are not going to have effective parent and caregiver engagement. And as we know in our personal relationships, it all starts with trust. They have to trust you. They have to trust you that you have their best interests in mind and that you are there to support them and to have their back. It's our job in councils to make our families feel comfortable with their differences. We're not all the same. We do things different ways. We believe things different ways. We have different practices, but each is valid. And that trust and that feeling comfortable comes with sharing both what we as a council feel and believe and how, what we're struggling with, and welcoming them to share with us. To sometimes do wellness checks with our families, especially our most vulnerable families, and especially with COVID still continuing, doing wellness checks. And are you okay? Is there anything you need? Can we help you? And to consider, and I'm going to mention this again, but how are you welcoming people to council, to your council meetings, to your activities, to what you're doing? And finally, to always be authentic in all of your dealings with your parents and caregivers, and all of your dealings with the educators and the staff in your school. If relationships are the foundation of family and caregiver engagement, communication is the way we got to go. If we do not have good communication, we're not going to have good relationships. When councils communicate effectively, and when I talk today, I'm talking not only with your parent and caregivers, but also with your teachers and your education staff. But when we communicate effectively, it increases that trust that is so important for relationships. It results in more realistic parent expectations, which will help you, and it will also help your teaching staff. And we find that parents are more committed to helping their kids improve. And that goes back to pupil achievement. And at the end of the day, everybody feels supported. You will feel supported by your parent and caregiver community. Your parents and caregivers will feel supported by you. School will feel school teachers will feel supported by everybody. So what do we have to keep in mind when we're keeping our families informed? Well, we contact our parents and caregivers when it's required. We don't want to be sending them off email blasts all the time, because if it's not important, the next email blast that comes in is, oh yeah, it's just a council writing me again. And they may ignore it, and they may miss something that's really important. And use various methods of contacting them, emails. And I'm going to talk about some in a minute, but I'll just say them again because I can never say it too many times. Emails, if you have a social media account, using that, school messenger, talking to them face to face, various ways of communicating. In some communities, they really like WhatsApp. that's what you might want to use. You might want to send text messages, whatever works in your community. But whatever communication method you use, make sure it's two-way. Because if you're just sending stuff out and you have no way to hear back, that's called a monologue. Don't bother calling it a dialogue. So in your communication, in at least, it doesn't necessarily have to be in every form, but at least in some of the forms of communication, ensure that there's a way for your parents to respond back to you. And then make sure that what you have heard from your parents influences the work that the council does moving forward. If you ask for input from their parents and they give it to you, and then they never see it acted on, they're not going to give you any more information next time you ask. And finally, try to use at least the top 2 or 3 languages in your school. Your principal will be able to tell you what they are from the school survey. You are eligible for translation and interpretation services from the board through the Parent and Community Engagement Office. Interpretation services are free. You do have to pay for the translation services, and I'll be honest, sometimes it gets a little bit expensive. So you won't want to translate everything, but make sure that you are translating the stuff that's really important, that the parents really need to know. So here's the first screen that you may want to screenshot. The different tools that are available to you as school council from the board. The first is School Messenger. School Messenger enables you to broadcast email messages through the office that go to all the parents and guardians of your school that the office has their emails from. And nowadays, that's almost everybody. You will not get there is no way for you to get communication back. So if you send something out through School Messenger that you want parents to reply to, let them know where they can reply. Which brings us to the council email. Every school council is eligible for a school council email. It would be your school name, school council's school name at tdsb.on.ca. This allows you to have an email address that can be used now. In years past, you had to re-register, but now it can be used each successive year. When the school chair, when the council chair departs, they will still be able to use that with the next council chair, just changing the passwords. And you can get communication back from your parents and caregivers at your school council email. Zoom is available to all school councils through to the end of this school year at least. And there is a link there for how you can hook up to Zoom if you don't have it already. We have found in last year and the year before when we were using Zoom that a lot of school councils were getting a larger turnouts at their meetings because it was easier for parents to just turn on the school council meeting from home. So you may want to use a hybrid version. You may want to use some meetings via Zoom, some meetings in person. You may want to do them all but from Zoom. But it's there, it's free, take advantage of it. If any of you have taken part in the town hall meetings in the last year or two through the PCO, you will have had exposure to Thought Exchange. And Thought Exchange is a fantastic way for you to poll your parents and your caregivers, survey them what they think on a particular subject. They can just put it in at their convenience and you can go back and retrieve the information later. And I just see that I don't have a link for that, but you will be able to see it if you go into the community, how to get involved. You'll see it under, I think it comes up under Thought Exchange. It may come up under communication. And finally, tech support. A lot of school councils had some tech issues, especially with their school council email last year. We all know that there's always some problem with tech. We have somebody in the tech department dedicated to school councils and to their tech issues. So this is where you will find it. In most cases, your principal will have to go in and do it, and will have to put in a ticket saying this is what the issue is. But they're there to help you and support you. And if you have any issues with that, again, just write to me and let me know. So that's your tools for communication. So how can we take relationship building that we want to do and the communication that I just talked about, and how can we use that to inform the work that we are doing with our councils? Well, the first way is to survey our parents and caregivers to identify the knowledge and the needs that they have to support pupil achievement in their home, and things that they need you to know so that the system can be more accountable to them. I have some sample emails that I have written up, and if anybody would like to see one or would like to see it, then just drop me an email and I'm happy to share them with you. You can use it as a sample for making your own email. They're done through Google Forms, or feel free to use the survey on your own, the way it is. Sorry. But don't necessarily do all your surveying electronically. Sometimes the old-fashioned way, standing there with a clipboard and a piece of paper at the school door when they're coming in and asking them questions, is a really good way of getting information, because if they don't understand the question, you're there to explain it to them. Also, you're letting them know by doing this that the school council exists, that the school council cares about what they think, and the school council wants them to be involved. When you reach out to your community, either through surveys or communication, reach out to all of your parents and caregivers, regardless of race, class, language, nationality, their education, their abilities, their gender, or their background. We know from 50 years of research that there is no hindrance to learning how to support our students. Nothing gets in the way of building the capabilities of our parents, not race, not class, not language, not gender or abilities. And once you've reached out to them, once you've talked and heard back through surveys or talking to them, take that information to organize the work that you're going to do as a school council this year. And that can be through workshops or speaker sessions. And those speakers could be the teachers in your school. It could be somebody from the board who has the particular skill set. It could be from fellow parents and caregivers who have a skill that they would like to share. Doing reading and learning circles and conversation circles where you have a specific topic and you invite people in to talk about that. I'm going to talk about these more in an upcoming training session. The session that's entitled Going to the Margins. I will be talking more about that. But your school council meetings should also offer an opportunity to do one or all of these things, to explore issues that are identified by your parents and caregivers and your teachers. So I'm now going to talk some things that you need to know for running your school council meetings, some tools and ideas and strategies that you can use. The first thing is Regulation 612 tells us that you must have at least 4 meetings a year of your school council. I think that 6 to 7 is a nice number. Some school councils have a meeting every month, and that's great. Do what works for your school. 4 is the minimum. My concern about 4 is that you're not getting a lot done because you're having a big gap between meetings. But you know what, if that works for you, that's fine. The first one has to occur within the 30 days of the start of school and is usually linked to your election. Quorum, you must have quorum to vote on any issues or make any decisions, even if you decide by consensus. If you don't have quorum, you cannot make any determining decisions about how council will go forward. If you find yourself in a meeting without quorum, it doesn't mean that you can't discuss the issue. You just will table the vote until the next meeting. So what is quorum? Quorum is that the majority of members must be in attendance, and the majority of those in attendance must be parents. And this is why we say in the bylaws that you should have a minimum of 5 parent members, because you have to have a teacher member, a non-teacher member, a community rep, and if you are a high school, you have to have, or a middle school, you have to have a student rep, and you can have a student rep in elementary school as well. So if you have all 4 of those members, then you're going to have 5 parents, because you have to have more parents. The majority of people there have to be parents. Okay. Even if you only don't have a student member and you have 3, then you're going to have at least 4 parents in attendance. And so that's why we say 5. 10 is a good number, because then if a couple don't show up, you still got quorum. So all school council meetings usually take place at school, and they must be in a place that is accessible. School council meetings may take place outside of the school, but you will have to get insurance for that, since it's outside of the school. And the principal is required to give notice to the community of when the meetings are coming up. And I just see a question pop up, and I forgot to say, if you have any questions, please put it in the Q&A section, which you'll find down at the bottom, and I'm going to answer them at the end of the presentation. So don't worry, I will get to all of them. So I'll talk for a minute about permits. That's always a question that comes up. There are no cost permits are given for available for every school council for monthly school council meetings. So whether you have them 4 times a year or once every month, you are eligible for a monthly school council meeting permit. And other council meetings that you may have, for example, if you have committees and they're meeting in the school, then you also have no cost permits for those meetings too, as long as they follow the council mandate, which means if it's a school council meeting that's been mandated by the school, the committee's been mandated by the school council, that's covered by the permit. And you also have to have the insurance that's necessary, and I'm going to get that to in a minute, and that caretaking is available. The link at the bottom will give you all the information you need to know about permits and how to apply for one in the event that it doesn't meet the criteria that's there. Now, insurance, which is always a topic. As of January of this year, school councils no longer need to purchase insurance for school council meetings, and that includes their committee meetings. It includes all executive committees and representative members are covered under the TDSB Commercial General Liability Insurance Program. Volunteers are also covered when participating in any TDSB school sanctioned school council activity or event. However, the general liability insurance does not include coverage for losses that would be covered under other types of insurance policies, such as property, cyber, drone, automobile, or crime insurance. And school council members, representatives, and volunteers are not covered for personal property loss or injury. All right. The link is at the bottom there's more information, there's more detailed information on insurance. But in the past, you have had to have purchase insurance for school council meetings. You no longer have to do that. So that's a burden that's been lifted off of you and off of the council's finances. So let's talk about meetings, and let's begin with agendas. I get this question a lot. The reason I chose this particular meme is because agendas, when they are effective and done well, are the result of more than one person having a say in it. The agenda is set by the chair or co-chair, right? It's not set by the principal, but you should consult with your principal beforehand. When I was school council chair, and I was school council chair in a couple of different schools as my kids went through school, I would set what I thought should be on the agenda, and then I would always meet a week or two beforehand with the principal and have a chat with them and ask them, was there anything that had come up that they wanted to put into the agenda, anything that they wanted the parents and caregivers at the meeting to know about? Had they heard anything from the teachers that the teachers wanted on the agenda? I would share things at that time that I had heard from parents, in talk in the community, and we'd have a little discussion about what was going on and then finalize the what we thought should be in the agenda. You should also, and probably prior to meeting with the principal, reach out to your executive and any committee chairs that you have to ask if there's anything that they want to have on the agenda. Seek input, let your members know that they should always contact you ahead of time for things that they like to see on the agenda, maybe new business. Maybe they've heard of a couple of issues that have come up in their discussions with parents and caregivers, and they think that it would be a good idea to put it on the agenda. So the agenda, while it's the chair and co-chair's job to create it, it should be a group effort. Now, at meetings, no personal items may be addressed at a council meeting. So let's say, for example, I'm going to use an example from way back in the day when my kids were in elementary school, and we were just, once again, I date myself, we were just beginning to hear a lot about peanut allergies or food allergies, and there was a mother there who was concerned about what was going on because her son had a peanut allergy. We could not discuss on the meeting floor the particular issues that her son was facing around his peanut allergy. That was a personal issue. She could talk with me as a chair later or with the principal, but what we could talk about was allergies, anaphylactic shock, the danger that was imposed to kids in the lunchroom, to kids in the lunchroom if they had a peanut allergy or another food allergy and someone was sitting there with that food. So it was an opportunity for us to talk generally about an issue, and at the same time, we were, by doing that, able to address some of the concerns that the mother had. You want to have a consistency in the operation of your meeting. So are you going to have, now I've got down here Robert's Rules of Order. That is a very rigid technical way of doing it. I don't want you to worry about that, but basically, are you going to vote on issues, or are you going to decide them through consensus? And you should decide. The executive could make a recommendation to the council, and then the council could vote what way did they want to go. Do that at the beginning of the year. You should decide, how are we going to do this? Are we going to do voting, or are we going to do consensus? And then probably stick to one of those throughout the year, unless, of course, you find that the method you chose is just not working. And then you will bring it forward to council that you want to do it again. And the reason you want to do this is that you want to be accountable and transparent in your actions. You don't want someone to say, well, how come we're deciding this by consensus when last meeting we decided a similar subject and we voted on it, right? You want to keep the way you do decision-making basically the same. Your minutes should be accurate, neutral, summarize the main points of the meeting, and indicate what actions are taken. Sometimes people don't want to take minutes because they think they have to write down, and then Nancy said, and then Mary said, and then George said, and it's too much. No, what your minutes should do is reflect the general consensus of debate, to summarize what this is the argument in favor of the motion or of the proposal, and these were the arguments against the proposal, and if there was a vote, what did it pass or didn't it? And you don't have to say who voted and who did for what. And then to indicate if there are any actions that have been decided on that have to happen in the future, especially before the next meeting. So I've already said that school council meetings may usually occur in the school. Where in the school are they? Is it accessible to everybody? If there is someone who is disabled, will they still be able to get there? How do you advertise that you're having a meeting? How does the word go out? How much time do you get? Do you include the agenda in the meetings, in your notification of the meetings? Who is welcome at your meetings, and how are they welcomed? I remember hearing a long time ago of a mom that came to a meeting, and she was new to the neighborhood, and actually she was new to the country, and she was a little bit nervous about coming, but she thought it was really important. And she came into the room, and there were no chairs. The chairs were taken up by the council members, and she stood at the back of the room, and nobody said anything to her. Nobody welcomed her. And she just felt so unwelcomed and never went back. And the council lost a parent who wanted to be engaged. So you might want to assign a couple of council members who it's their job at the beginning of the meeting, before it gets started, to just survey the room, make sure everybody has a place to sit. If they see someone that they haven't seen before, or they aren't sure, to go up and introduce themselves and get their name and say, hi, how are you? And make sure that they feel welcome and that they'll want to come back. At your meeting, who gets to speak? And when do they get to speak? And what's the format? We have to remember, everybody has a voice. Sometimes we hear, oh, they don't have a voice. Everyone has a voice, but a lot of people just aren't heard. And how can you, as a chair, or you as a council member, ensure that everyone is heard and everyone is heard equitably? And that's difficult in a meeting, especially if you have a meeting with a contentious issue. But it's really important that as a council, you sit down and talk about that, maybe in a meeting separate from the full council meeting. How are you going to hear from people? Again, make sure that your meeting is a welcoming, inclusive space, welcoming newcomers by name, announcing the norms for discussion. So when you decide how you're going to have a discussion, just let everybody know, look, this is how it's going to work. When we have a debate, this is what we're going to do. If you're doing Zoom meetings, make sure people understand where the reaction button is, where the chat button is, if they want to do that. If you're going to open it up so that people can speak, are you going to have breakout rooms? Do that at the beginning of every meeting, so everyone, even the newcomers, are aware of what's going to happen. It's always a good idea to have a speakers list and to be attentive to that speakers list, to make sure that your meetings have meaningful and relevant content. That if you're having a discussion about a particular issue, you may want to break into small discussion groups of 2 or 3 people to let them talk about it amongst themselves, and then come back to as the group of a whole and talk, or to discuss it as a group. I always found one of the most difficult parts of opening discussion was ensuring that you were being inclusive. and that everybody that wanted to talk had a chance to talk. Some people would get up and they talk for a long time, and they would use up the time period. Like we had set aside a certain amount of time for discussion. So, and then the next person would get up and they'd start to talk, and you'd say, "Oh, I'm sorry, we're running out of time." That's not fair. So it's getting the rules out, having an agreement about how things are going to work so that it's equitable to everybody. So as the chair, what can you do to make sure your meetings are effective? Well, post the council agenda several days in advance of the meeting. Make sure that all of your members get it ahead of time. Post it on your website, or send it out by school messenger so that your parent community have it. Remind your participants of the rules of order that you've established. How's discussions going to work? What's going to happen? Is there a time frame for each subject on the agenda? Try really hard to start and end your meetings on time. Keep your opening remarks brief and outline what's to be done in the time allowed. When there's a discussion, or if someone's making a report and you're discussing around it, at the end of that, just summarize the main points that's been said. That's for the benefit, not just of your secretary who's taking the minutes, but for everybody in the room. Summarize the main items that were discussed before the vote and before moving on, if there's not a vote. Keep to your agenda and your timelines. And during discussions, maintain a speaker's list and be sure that nobody monopolizes the floor. And I'm just going to say here, I think I have it somewhere else in this presentation, but just in case I don't, what I really, I've been suggesting this for quite a while to school councils. And it's something different, it's something new, and it takes some getting used to. But each person on your agenda who's making a report, you, the principal, the teacher rep, if committees are making reports, they should hand in a written report that will go out with your agenda. It doesn't have to be all fancy and in paragraph form. It can be just jot notes of the most important things that they want to emphasize. And then at the meeting, they don't go through the whole report because everybody got it. They saw what was there ahead of time. They've had time to think about it, to ponder if they have any questions. But the person who's written the report, and this includes the principal, would highlight one or two things out of that report that they thought were most important. And then there's time for the people, the members of the council, or any other people that are at the meeting, to question the person who is giving the report and to have a bit of a discussion. I have sat through many, many, many hours of meetings where the report went on and on and on, and then there was no time to ask any questions. There was no time for clarification. And I usually thought of stuff the next day because I just heard it. If you get the report ahead of time and you can think about it, much more effective. So what can the parent members do and the participants who are at the meeting? They can agree to address one item at a time, to speak briefly and to the point, to strive to have an atmosphere of respect and trust and acceptance, even if they don't agree with what the speaker is saying, to give them the right to say it, and to agree to resolve any issues in a reasonable time frame or to table them for the next meeting. So we know from research that for engagement, for parent and caregiver engagement to be effective, it must be three things. It must be relational, building relations. It must be linked to learning. You see the guy at the bottom of the page here, right? Pupil achievement. It has to be linked to learning, and it has to be building the capabilities of our parents and caregivers to support learning at home. It doesn't have to be all three. Each thing you do doesn't have to be all three, but it should be one or two of those things. So every meeting should have an objective, right? Remembering your mandate of pupil achievement and accountability. So here we have it, the written reports, highlighting the areas and allowing for question and answers so that you can, the parents can learn what's going on at the school, and what's going on at the school that they need to know that they can support their kids' learning at home. Give them a reason to return to the next council meeting. I'm sure those of you who are here from elementary school will know that the first meeting of the year is usually jam-packed with people. All the kindergarten, all the JK, SK parents are there. Any new parents into the neighborhood are there. They're all there trying to find out what's going on. And then the next meeting, attendance has dropped down, right? Because maybe they didn't get anything out of that meeting that told them that in their busy life, the hour and a half, 2 hours was worth it to them. So if you are giving, for example, if you are having your reports written and out with the agenda, and then highlighting just a couple of the things at the meeting, you are now allowing more time in your council meeting to have a discussion on a topic, to bring a speaker in, a teacher in who's going to talk about a well-being issue, or is going to talk about discipline at the school, or is some issue that's going on, or you can have a topic about what's the best thing, what's the one thing you want your child to accomplish this year, a whole pile of things. But it gives the parent a reason, you know what, I really got something from that meeting. I'm coming back to the next one. So I'm going to take a couple of minutes just to talk about committees. Take a drink of water. Because for me, committees are where the work is done. So why do we have committees? Well, committees allow responsibilities to be shared. And one of the reasons I put this in tonight is because at the bylaws workshop that we did, I had a couple of questions about whether lunchroom supervisors could be, that were parents, would they be allowed to be on council? And the answer was no, they're not allowed to be on council because they're employees of the board. If they were a lunchroom supervisor at another school, then they could be on council, but not if they're at their school. But committees allow those same parents to be involved in the school council because they can sit on committee and they can investigate whatever that committee is working on and make recommendations to the school council to vote on it. This allows more parents to be involved. A parent might not want to make the commitment to sit on council. That might be too scary for them, but they could say, yeah, you know what, I'll sit on the gardening committee because it's, you know, it's only going to run for a couple months. Yeah, I can do that. It allows you to get the specialized skills that in your parent and the specialized knowledge in your parents and caregiver community, to seek them out and to use them. It allows your parents and caregivers to gain confidence, and then you might be able to convince them to sit on council next year. Matters can be examined in detail because they're only looking at one issue and they're examining it until they find the right answer. You don't want to waste the time in your council meeting arguing back and forth, round and over and under about it. No. Therefore, council becomes more efficient because what they do is they look at the recommendation and they decide on that. You have to remember, it's the responsibility of the school council to define the purpose, the limitations, and the responsibilities of the committee, to set their terms of reference, to ensure that the committees report on a regular basis to council meetings, and to make the final decisions based on the committee recommendations. Committees do not have the final say in what they've decided. They bring their recommendation to council and council votes on it. So there's two types of committees. There's standing committee and ad hoc. A standing committee would be listed in your bylaws. If you wanted to do that, you don't have to. But if they're in your bylaws, you are going to have them every single year. So make sure if you put if you add committees to your bylaws, that it's something that's going to happen every year. And usually it'd be something like budget or communication committee. An ad hoc committee is created by your council as needed. It might be a committee that you have every year, but you don't want to dictate that you have to have it every year. So it might be a fundraising committee, it might be a workshop committee, it might be even your communication committee. The responsibility of the committee chair is to ensure that all of the members of the council of the committee understand the purpose and expectations. And the chair of each committee has to be a school council member. Okay? That they will discuss the expectations of the members, and they will prepare and present committee reports to council meetings and set the agenda for all of the committee meetings and solicit go out and find the members that to sit on the committee and get their input. A written report should contain the main your final written report would contain the main options that you've considered. The report should be concise. It should make recommendations. This is what we considered, and this is what we recommend, and this is why. And they should be, and again, on the council agenda. If it's just an updating report, it doesn't have to be that determined. It would just be, this is what we're looking at and we're considering this. Or is there any ideas coming in from council? Is there anything you'd like us to, any direction you'd like us to go in? Okay, so that's committees. I'm going to talk just a little bit about money. So there's two types of funds for councils. There's public funds and there's private funds. The public funds are from the TDSB. There's $1.25 per student, a minimum of $300 and a maximum of $1,000. I am stunned to find that there are still councils that do not know about this. If you don't know about this, write down this GL 41500. That is the budget line number. It comes in on your principal's budget line. So you go to the principal and you say, I understand there's some money for me for the council on your budget general ledger number 41500. It is there for council business. So that would be if you were going to have refreshments. If you needed to pay, if you were bringing a speaker in that you needed to pay, if you were doing some outreach to your parent community, you wanted to pay for the production of a hard copy newsletter. It can pay for your translation that if you're going to translate for into some of your top languages. There's also TDSB sourced grants, and I have the link somewhere else in this presentation, so we'll get to that. Also on General Ledger 41500 is $500 from the Ministry of Education. And that is designated to be used for outreach to your parent community. It has to be an outreach project. So it could go to funding. If you wanted to set up a series of conversation circles and you were going to provide refreshments, it could be for that. If you were going to have a newsletter and you wanted to, or a website and you wanted to fund that, it has to be outreach to your parent and caregiver community. And again, there are programs from the ministry to a maximum of $1,000. I'm afraid I'm not quite sure how that's rolling out this year, but you will be able to find information about that on the school council website for the TDSB. Then there are private funds. And here's our guy, the eye on the ball again. All right. Pupil achievement, making the system accountable to the parents. So private funds are anything that you get through fundraising activities of the council or TDSB approved grants. And there you will see the phone number for the TDSB Business Development Office, where you can get information about approved grants. You can also find it on the website. Whatever money you raise, you have to submit a PSAB report along with your annual report. It goes to the principal, who then submits it to the Parent Community Engagement Office and TDSB. What I want you to remember is this. This is council money and council accountability. The public funds that I talked about, because it comes in on the principal's account, sometimes they get a little nervous about it, handing money over to you, because they have to account for the money. So anything that you spend, you have to hand receipts into them, and then you will be reimbursed. Okay. He or she is accountable for that money. This money, you're accountable for. You decide where it goes. And in the training workshop coming up called What? No Fundraising, I'm going to be addressing this a little bit more. You're not raising money to buy things for the school. You're raising money to do things for pupil achievement and to make the system accountable to parents. What does that look like? And we'll be talking about that in future months as well. So just a couple things to say about planning and budgeting. The school council will determine the financial needs, and you will determine those needs by surveying your families and then creating plans for what you're going to do, both from the families and from the work that you do with the school improvement plan and what's in that. Once the school council decides what their needs are, they may want to have a budget committee. You don't have to, but the budget committee allocates money based on council directives. So they will advise the council if there's a shortfall. You can only carry money over 2 years. You can carry it longer if you have a long-term project, but you usually can't carry it longer than 2 years. If the council decides, for example, we are going to do a series of workshops for our parents where they can learn how to support what their kids are learning in the classroom, how to support that at home. And we're going to need X number of dollars for supplies and for refreshments and advertising, blah, blah, blah. And the budget committee might say, well, we don't have that much money. You're going to need some more. And that's where fundraising comes in. You are not allowed, because of TDSB policy, you are not allowed to raise money just for the sake of raising money. You have to determine ahead of time what that money is going to be used for, right? You have to be accountable for it. So fundraising, you would go to fundraising and you would say, well, we understand that we've got a shortfall. We need $1,000. We need, let's say, $1,500 to do this project through the year. We need to raise $1,500. Fundraising committee would then come up with some ideas of how you could raise the $1,500 and go back to school council, who then decides votes on whether they're going to do that activity or not. It's council's responsibility for the distribution of the funds, and it's the budget committee or your treasurer. If you don't have a budget committee, the treasurer would do what the budget committee does. They're responsible for keeping the records. And just a couple of comments on volunteers, because I know that volunteers are the lifeblood of any council that wants to do outreach, that wants to do things, because you just can't do it all yourselves. You just can't. You have to find some volunteers who are going to help you. So what's the best way to do that? Well, can you help us is a good starting question. And you would make a list of all of the parents and caregivers that you come across over the year that are willing to help you, and maybe what some of their skill sets are. I'll go back to the gardening committee. Maybe if you know you're going to have a gardening committee, you'll look for some parent volunteers that are good at gardening. Also, not just the things that council wants to do, but things that where teachers may need some volunteers through the year. Let's get those relationships going. How can we help you? Where might you need parent volunteers? Make a list of where you think you will need volunteers through the year. We're going to do this and this and this, and we'll need volunteers here, here, and here. Teachers are going to do this, this, and this, and they'll need a couple of volunteers to go there, you know, and then you've got the list of the volunteers and the skill sets and the list of the needs. The one thing we never do is we never train our volunteers. And that's kind of silly, especially if there's a specific job you need them to do, even if it's working the bake sale. They should know what it is they need to do, when they're going to open, when they're going to close, what they will do if something isn't selling. Are they allowed to drop the price? All of that. If they're working at a book sale, if they're volunteering in a classroom, what sort of things do they need to know? Train them so that they feel the capability, building family capabilities. Okay. And check in with them too. How's it going? If it's an ongoing volunteer thing, how's it going? Is it going okay? Or is there anything you need? If it's a one-off, how did that go for you? Is there anything we could have done that would have made the experience better for you? And then always thank them. You don't have to send them a written note, although that would be nice, but just go up to them after and say, thank you so much for that volunteer work. That was really important. And just some last thoughts. School councils build partnerships by being transparent, inclusive, and accountable. And our guy with his eye on the ball. All right. We can't successfully help our students to achieve or make the system accountable if we aren't being transparent in what we're doing, if we aren't inclusive, reaching to the margins of our community to bring everybody in, and if we aren't accountable for the decisions that we make and what we do. Just a word on upcoming workshops. Going to the margins, we'll be looking at how to get what are sometimes termed the hard to reach, but whose voices aren't we hearing, and what do we need to consider, and how can we do that? It's going a little bit more in depth to going to the margins, building relationships. On the 9th, we're looking at the school improvement plan. You are required by both the ministry and the TDSB to have a role in the development of the school improvement plan. What can that look like? And then on the 17th of November and the 18th of January, I am doing bylaws. And there's one that's not up here. How did I forget that? Sorry, on October 27th, I'm doing a training workshop called What? No Fundraising. And it's going to be about things that you can do other than fundraising. So
there's a lot of questions in the Q&A.
Yep, I see them, and I'm stopping now. I just want to once again point out my email if you have any questions.
I can put it in the chat.
Thank you very much. Okay, so
the questions out to you, Nancy, so that you
can.
Oh,
yeah, that'd be great, right? Everybody, I want to introduce you to Margaret Horvath. You've probably already met Margaret. She's the office administrator for the Parent and Community Engagement Office. She is your lifeline.
Thank you. I'm having a bad hair day today, it looks like. Anyway, okay, so first question is, what if we don't have a teacher or community rep?
Then you go to the principal and you say, we need a teacher rep and a non-teacher rep. And could you please get one for the next meeting? It's possible if one teacher doesn't want to do it, 2 or 3 teachers could share the job. The position only gets 1 vote, right? But 2 or 3 teachers could share it and could so that they don't have to come in all the time. Another advantage of doing Zoom meetings because then they could go home and they could do it from home. But the principal's required to make sure that there's one there. Community reps. Your community rep is meant to, these are called school councils and not parent councils, because they are to bring parents and caregivers, education staff, community, and students where applicable, bring all of those people together to work and decide how can they help pupil achievement and how can they make the system accountable. So the community, there's a wealth of experience out there, but I suggest that as a council, you decide, do you have a main objective this year? Is there something, some particular thing that you want to focus on? So for example, maybe the SIP is identifying that literacy is a bit of an issue. So you might want to decide that one of your objectives is going to be doing literacy and building the capabilities of your families to support literacy at home. So you might go to your library and ask if a librarian would be willing to sit as a community rep. Or there may be a community organization in your area that does things with kids and has different what do I want to say, events for kids, and maybe they would want to come in and do that. If it's a high school and you want to look at helping to support your kids and what they will do post-secondary, you might want to bring someone from your business association into it. So think about that. And again, you could have two different people and they would share it, but the position only gets one vote.
Okay. Does the requirement to respond to parent council's requests/inquiries also apply to superintendents, or does it apply to principals and staff at the school?
To reply to council.
I'm assuming that the person means that they sent something out by email or somehow to a superintendent, and they're questioning as to whether or not they are required to respond just as principals are.
If you sent it out personally and it's a personal issue, I would hope that the superintendent would reply to you. And if they haven't, I would write to them again and say, just a reminder that I had this concern. If it's the school council that's making a recommendation to the board, the superintendent is the representative of the board. And yes, they were required to respond to a recommendation you were making.
One of the things I always recommend too, Nancy, and sorry for interjecting here,
Yeah.
but if you ever have a verbal conversation with a principal or whoever, I always follow it up by email. So just say, Nancy, we had a conversation today. This is just a confirmation of what we spoke about. We talked about A, B, C, D, E. That way, at least there's some kind of a paper trail, for lack of a better word.
Yeah, no, it's a great idea. And you're letting them know what your understanding of the meeting.
Yeah, so that
and
they can get back to you
Yeah.
if they understood something different. And then,
Yeah.
then once again, it's concrete. It's in paper, lack of a better word.
Exactly. Thank you.
What if the principal does not share their agenda items, but instead prints off their separate agenda?
Nope. You mean a school council agenda? Nope. It's this council. It's the chair's responsibility to create the agenda. Always create it with your principal. Always create it with your principal. That's about building relationships and trust. And if you need to, you can say, I went to a school council training session last night and I learned that actually I'm supposed to be doing it. I'm sorry for making you do that work all this time, but so maybe we can work together. I'll create a draft one and then we can talk about it and move forward. But my understanding is, according to the Education Act, I'm supposed to make it.
I guess too, if they had a standard template, that would be good as well, where A follows B, B follows, like
Yep.
C, like the principal's input would be one of the bullets that happens, so that there would be no contradiction to the way that things are supposed to flow.
That's true. I was going to, I was going to try to find the link, but it would take me too long. If you go every school once upon a time had a school council handbook. By now, most of them have disappeared. But if you Google School Council Handbook Ontario, it will come up. And
I believe it's also on the school council external webpage. I remember seeing it.
okay,
I
okay.
believe. Don't quote
Okay.
me. Don't anybody quote me, okay? I believe.
Anyway, within the handbook, just look at the front and
Yeah,
they have samples of agendas.
yeah.
So if that would help, that's a good suggestion, Margaret. If it would help, if you went in, look at, I found this form, how can we use this together to
Yeah.
work on it?
Okay, next question. What if?
And I'll just, sorry, I'll just say now, and I was going to put it in, I found a quote last year I really like, and it's change moves at the speed of trust.
Hmm.
And I think we have to, as school councils and school council chairs, we have to remember that if we're trying to do some changes, and these workshops are going to be suggesting some new changes for school councils, it moves at the speed of trust. So be gentle with everyone that you're trying to bring along. And when they trust that you've got everyone's best interests at heart, they'll be more open to it.
And I guess too, that we're in a period of change right now as well, with a lot of new principals and a lot of new vice principals. So it's a learning curve for everybody. So, everybody can be learning, like even principals should be attending these sessions, right? Because everybody could be learning the proper way to do things right from the beginning. Yep. Okay, next one. What if a member brings up an issue that has not best practice, but everyone to vote on it? What if a member brings up an issue that is not best practice, but gets everyone to vote on it? How would you navigate this?
That's not best practice?
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm going to assume, so somebody brings up a issue. First of all, okay. Okay, because a couple of different things directions I'm going in. First of all, and you can get on the board's website the code of ethics, the board's code of ethics, and if you have a contentious, if you're having contentious meetings, starting to do the code of ethics at the beginning, it just talks about the proper way to behave and to respectfully way to work together. You may want to post that. That's the first thing. Second thing is you want to get into a habit that that if somebody wants something on the agenda, they contact you ahead of time, rather than having new business. The problem, new business is good because it gives people who aren't part of the council necessarily, it gives them an opportunity to bring up something that's important to them. The problem with new business is it kind of, takes you by surprise. And if it is a situation where you think, well, that's not best practice, it's a little, it can throw you off balance. It also allows somebody to come in with a group of friends and kind of try to force something through. Although only the members can vote on an issue, not every parent who's at a meeting can vote. So that's the other thing. I think the best way around it is to start a practice that an issue has to be on the agenda to be discussed. And if somebody wants to bring something up, say, oh, thank you so much, come and talk to me about it and we'll put it on the next agenda. However, if it comes up, if it is on the agenda, if it's on the agenda and you as a chair are a little anxious about it, you should have time to check whether it opposes your bylaws, if it opposes the regulation 612, if it opposes any policies or procedures of the board. And also to discuss with your principal and say, look, at this issue's coming up. It's making me a little anxious. What do you think about it? So that you can have an argument, or you can prepare what you want to say in response to what they are bringing forward. If the majority of council votes for it, you might want to do some lobbying of council beforehand.
Okay, I just found the school
Yeah.
council's a guide for members. I'm gonna put that into the chat. That's what we had talked about, right? The handbook?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, let me just put that into the chat, the link for it, and then I'll get back to the Q&A. Okay, next Q&A is, can we record our meetings and then make available to community for review? Audio, visual, minutes.
Margaret, correct me if I'm wrong. I know this came up in the bylaw template. I believe you may record it, but you, as I did tonight, you have to let everyone know. I think you have to have a vote at council that you will record your meetings, and then you have to let everybody know at each meeting that it is being recorded.
Is that in the Qualtrics?
I don't know.
Do you remember? Because I could
I
quickly
don't
look
remember,
at it.
and I don't have my copy with me.
No, but
Does that sound right?
I don't want to say yes, but I will look it up. When we're done, I'll look that one up.
Okay, so if you just hang at the end of the meeting, hang around, and we will, if you're interested in that answer.
Regulation 612 specifies the purpose of school councils, quote, to improve improve pupil achievement, close quote. However, our school council has been told that school council's role is specifically, quote, only parent engagement, close quote. Can you clarify which purpose council should be focusing on?
Well, I don't know what the person who said parent achievement means, but as I said at the beginning, it's pupil achievement, but we know from research around the world that one of the top 5 ways of improving pupil achievement is through parent engagement. So school councils are looking to improve pupil achievement by means of parent engagement. Parent engagement, however, does not mean buying things for the school. I have looked for years and I cannot find any research that tells me that when you buy stuff for the school, the kids are going to do better. Yeah, they might, but that's not enough to make a difference. So I'm not sure if that answered your question, because I'm not sure what the person means by saying, no, the purpose of school councils is parent engagement. Yeah. I'll stick with my answer. It's improving pupil achievement through parent engagement.
They're intertwined. One can't be achieved without the other.
No.
Does a committee chair need to be a voting member of council?
Regulation 612 says the chair should be a member of council. Yes.
Okay.
I'm going to leave it there.
How do you convey the importance of planning a budget?
Well, there is going to be, and Margaret, I hope you might have the date. There is going to be another training session for councils on fundraising, and that they will be able to talk to you about the policies and procedures of the TDSB around fundraising. But one of the dictates, as I said, is that you cannot fundraise without a purpose. So if you have a purpose, if you know what you're going to fundraise for, and it's connected to pupil achievement, then you will need to know what that's going to cost you. And to know what that's going to cost you, you need to budget out the money you have. You will have $300 to $1,000. You will have between $800 and $1,500, depending on the size of your school. That's those public funds I talked about. So at the very least, you will have between $800 and $1,500. How are you going to spend that money in the best way possible. And to do that, you really need to have a budget, and but you certainly have to account for it. And that's the treasurer's job, to bring, collect the receipts and put them in and get the money and distribute it and all that. So that's my.
On October
Yes,
26th, I'm just looking at the external school council website. On October 26th, there is a session being offered by our finance group, school council fundraising best practices.
Okay,
So
thank you.
that is there for everybody
Okay,
to
thank you.
go to. And I will, at the end of this, show everybody the external page. I'll share
Okay.
my screen and we can spend a couple
And
minutes.
for any, okay, thank you. And for any of you, if I'm not answering your question well enough, just add in, just do it again.
Yeah, we have time. Okay, can we go over quorum example again? If 10 parent council members, and if parent council has 10 members, and let's say only 7 show up for the meeting,
Yeah.
how many votes do we need to pass something? Is it 4? Because I'm assuming that what this person is saying is half is 3.5 of 7, so 4 people.
Yeah.
Or does it mean because the parent council has 10 members, should it actually be 6? What about
Okay.
proxy votes? Is that possible?
No, you cannot have proxy votes. No.
Okay.
No.
So where would the
Okay,
quorum
so yeah,
achievement happen here if the parent council has 10, but only 7 show up?
okay, so thank you for that one. So if you have 10 parent members, let's say you have 10 parent members, and you have a teacher rep, a non-teacher rep, and a community rep. Let's just keep it simple. Then you have 13 members. So you have to have at least 7 of them at your meeting. All right, because 7 is 50% plus 1.
Right.
Right. So you have to have at least 7 at your meeting. Of those 7 that are at the meeting, at least
4.
I'm doing it. At least 4 have to be parents, right? The majority of the ones in attendance have to be parents. Okay, now let's say, so you've got 3, let's say only,
Nancy, that the parent council, including the teacher rep, the community rep, and the student rep, totals 10. So that means of those 10, that 7 would be parents. How many do they need for?
Okay, so if the total number, including all of your members, is 10, then quorum would be 6, and the majority of those 6 have to be parents. So at least 4 have to be parents.
Yeah.
All right. And that's why you want to have maybe 10 members is a nice number, because it allows, you're not necessarily going to get all 10 members every meeting. And so it makes sure that you're going to have enough parent members to cover the quorum. So again, it has to be, quorum is 51% of the total members there in attendance, and the total number of the people in attendance have to be parents.
The next question is about the $500 from the ministry. Is that separate from programs?
Yes. It's on budget line 41,500. You get it every year.
Okay. I'm just moving on to the next question here. The person asked about the YouTube channel. I'm just looking it up right now, and I will put it into the chat in a moment as soon as my screen comes up here. Okay, so I'll move on to the next question, but I will put it into the chat for the person who asked. So we answered that one. That one's done. And the person who asked, we have many different faces of Nancy in those pictures, in those videos. So you'll get to see the many changing hairstyles of Nancy as the years go on. Okay, let me just say her hair is really long right now. Okay, next one. Can you please review the difference between a voting and non-voting member or parent/caregiver?
Okay, there's no such thing as a non-voting member except for the principal. The principal is the only non-voting member of council. The reason they don't vote is because their role is to accept advice from the council, and you cannot vote on the advice you're receiving. What we have seen is in the past, we have seen councils where if you're a parent at the school, you get to come and be a member of council and you get to vote. Or some will say you're a member of council, but only these get to vote. The voting members are the ones who have put their name forward at the beginning of the year to be the parent caregiver member of the council. The number of parent caregiver members are determined by your bylaws, which you will be working on for the template that has to be in by December 23rd. So that's who the voting members are. So it's the parent members, the teacher rep, the non-teacher rep, the community rep, and if you have a student rep, they all get a vote. Any parent or caregiver of a student at the school is eligible to be a parent member of council, and any parent caregiver member of a pupil at the school can come to a council meeting, should be encouraged to come to a council meeting, should be encouraged to participate in the discussions and the debates, should be encouraged to give their opinion. But when it comes time to making the decision, only the elected or acclaimed members of council are allowed to do that. Now, Regulation 612 also says, and this has come up just recently in the last year or so, that any school council meeting is open to the public. And that means anybody in the community, whether they have a child at the school or not, if they're in the community, remember I said that was the goal of councils, they may attend. And they may give their opinions as well.
Okay, let me go back. I'm just trying to find that YouTube channel. I should have it memorized, but I don't. Okay, next one. As a chair, are you allowed to raise money or donations and bring it to the school and the money be used for whatever school needs? Like, for example, gym equipment, music equipment, or art supplies, etc.
You mean as a chair yourself?
That's what I'm assuming.
Just raising.
The person who submitted this, do you want to put some more information into the Q&A for us? So Nancy's asking for a little bit more detail.
Yeah, because you are allowed to make a donation. You'd make it through the TDSB office because the TDSB is a charity, and you could make a charitable donation to TDSB directing that it go to your school. But you're in a bit of a area too, because you would not be able to dictate how you could donate it directly to the school, and the school would then, you could say, this is where I would like it to, but you can't dictate to the council how the council would choose to use the money.
Okay, next one. Our current bylaws allow for proxy votes. Are we not allowed to accept them?
No. And you'll see in the template, which you will, I hope, are working on, the template does not allow for proxy votes. It's a question of equity.
Okay, so we had some clarification about donating money, or bringing money in. So they said, yes, as a chair myself.
If you want to donate to the school, you can do it through the TDSB, and you'll get a charitable receipt. You could donate it directly to the school and say, make a deal with the principal, but this is a personal thing. This wouldn't be you as chair. nor could you donate it to the school and dictate to the council and dictate how the council could use it. No.
I think we just have one more, unless anybody else has any more questions. This is my first year at a middle school, and I've been told by the principal that parent involvement in the parent council is very low. Historically for this school, are there any tips to help with recruitment of more parents in the council?
Listen, my kids went to a middle school too, and I know it was really difficult. The middle school they went because it had a special program. If it has a special, and but if you're in a high school and you have some sort of special program, whatever it is, that's a good entrance road into parents, because they are already a little bit more engaged because they made the decision to send their child to a school outside of area. And I would play on that. The other thing is the trouble, you know what? That's a really good question, because it's really hard, because the kids are bused in or they come by bus. You can't meet the parent at the parent door. Anytime there's something going on, in parent teacher interviews are going on right now, have a table at there to introduce the council and what they're doing. If there's any school event the parents are coming into, music nights or arts nights or anything like that, have a table where you're introducing yourself, asking people what they would like, what do they want, what do they need. Talking to the parents that that are at that school, remembering that you're already engaged. All right, this is the thing we have to remember. We're sitting at the table because we're already engaged. So we've got the social capital. We kind of understand to some extent how the system works. We're comfortable in making some demands or some requests. What we need and what we want isn't necessarily what the other people we aren't seeing what they need and want, but it's a place to start. So talk to the parents that you do see, and what do they need to know, especially at middle school. You know what they want to know at middle school? They want to know transitions. What do I need to know when my kid goes off to high school? How is my child being assessed and evaluated? What's going on with the math curriculum? What's going on with the literacy curriculum? Is there something, what do I need to know as a parent as my child is learning French, or if they're in school learning Spanish, or if there's another language there? And then have an evening, maybe at a school council meeting. Tonight, we're going to talk about how to support numeracy in grade 7 and 8. Today, we're going to talk about
Can I just say too, Nancy, that all the representatives from these different departments are more than willing to come out to school council meetings. Like if you want somebody from French, you can reach out to the French department and they'll join your school council meeting, especially if they're being done by Zoom. Not that I'm saying that you have to do it by Zoom, but people can fit these things into their schedule much easier if you're doing it virtually. So yeah, so don't be afraid to reach out to all these different departments. Like you might want spec ed, or you might want somebody from guidance if you're a middle school to come out and talk. But don't forget too that there are many webinars from these departments that are being offered. And I know particularly about the transition ones, because guidance comes to me to set up the webinars. So I know that these are all available.
Could they use the webinar and do it as a Zoom meeting? Could they link into it and show it through a Zoom meeting?
If you had multiple devices, yeah, sure you could, right? Because somebody could be the, I'm just trying to think. Somebody could have registered for it and be showing it on screen. Yeah, sure they could.
In the training session called What No Fundraising, I'm going to be talking about different things that alternative ways that you could, things you could do as a council that would hopefully encourage those parents in middle and high school. Middle and high school is really hard. What engagement looks like at that point is becoming a coach and helping to support your kid. And it's giving them ideas, or just letting them come and talk, just having an online conversation circle about what are you hoping for your child this year, or what are you struggling with, things like that.
Nancy, I just
Building
wanted to
trust.
say too, I had a thought come to me, but I can't talk and type at the same time because I was looking for the YouTube channel. One of the questions was about the low parent involvement in the parent council. One of the things you can do, I thought, and I think I got this idea hearing it from you, Nancy, is rather than have the parents commit to being an actual, chair, vice chair, because people are afraid of commitment, right? So if you come in and ask them, would you be, a committee member of, let's say, fundraising, or, the end of year gala or whatever, this gets them into the mindset of helping out parent council without the actual commitment of it. And what you're doing is you're building up their confidence and letting them know what the processes are without them actually having the commitment, without them even realizing they're actually doing the job that they don't want the title for, right?
That's right. I see that we've gone over time. Are there any more questions there?
Yep.
Okay.
Just to confirm, our council cannot accept proxy votes, even though we are currently operating under our old bylaws until our new ones are completed in December.
Nope.
Okay. Just two more here, and if anybody wants to stay on, I can show them the parent council site. Is there a percentage of funds that is allowed to be carried over from one year to the next, or year to year? I think it's just a time allotment, right? You said 2 years?
Yeah, you're allowed to carry over. It was in my head $2,000, but that could be a maximum of $2,000, but that could have been from years ago. The question, I'm sorry to say, would be to go to the fundraising training session and ask them.
Yeah. Go to the experts.
Yeah, you might be able to find it online if you go into fundraising and then go into policy, you read the policy book and it would tell you, but
so the
I'm
last
not 100% sure.
The last one that we have here is, I'm assuming, directed to me. Do you mean the department rep from TDSB? I'm assuming that you mean that when I was talking about French or guidance coming to your school council meetings, absolutely. Reach out to any one of these departments, let them know that you're interested. And like, we have speech language pathologists coming to school council meetings. We have spec ed coming to school council meetings. Reading coaches, they're more than willing to come out and help you out. And that helps to build all those relationships as well too, right? And your parents will become more involved in the meetings if they know that there's a special guest coming.
But I mean, that's true. And I would encourage you to do that. But also I would encourage you to build the relationships with the teachers in your school, because the best people to teach what's the literacy learning in primary in this school going, or what's the mathematical stuff is going on in grade 7 and 8 is a grade 7 and 8 math teacher at your school. And while you're not allowed to use money to pay for teacher things, if you wanted to use some council money to buy like a $10 gift card to Tim's or Starbucks or something as an honorarium to say thank you to the teacher, you could do that. But part of it is building the relationships, because, and it's also in telling the teachers, like, when our parents know how to support the learning that you're doing in the classroom, how to support that at home, then your job is going to become easier. So how can we work together to make sure that to help the parents to do that? How can we do that? And then it's to their advantage. And they will learn that. They will say, yo, that was worth my while. Are there any more questions?
There is not. So if people wanted to stick around, I can show them navigation of the school council external website, of the PCO YouTube channel, where you can find more information. Do you want to hang around for that, Nance, too?
Okay. And for those of you that have to go because the kids are banging on the door, I want to thank you very much for attending this evening. I want to thank you for all of the work that you do with your school council. As I said on Monday night, I cannot overemphasize how important your work is. You may feel undervalued, but it's really, really important. So thank you very much for attending this evening. And I hope you'll join me again for one of the other sessions.